All right. Mike Magnuson is working with Gloria Nauden to get into this group, but we're going to start and go through kind of some of the pro forma stuff because I have some stuff that I have to read. First off, let's do a roll call and make sure that people are connected both directions. If you would unmute long enough to say here or yes or whatever as I go through the alphabetical list. Anitris Bennett is not going to be with us here tonight. So Dan Conrad? You're with us. Okay, Debbie DeBacco.
Yep.
I'm here.
Very good, thank you. Gloria, Mike is working on. Joyce Riley is here.
Yes.
Linda Weller.
I'm here.
There we go, thank you. And Terry, you're with us, right?
Yeah.
Okay, if you are joining remotely, and this is kind of odd because if you had already joined remotely, then you know that the link and the documents for this meeting are on the library homepage, www.hoaglibrary.org. Per the executive order under which we're running this meeting, a Zoom recording is being made and will be available on our same website, not necessarily tomorrow morning first thing. In addition, according to the rules as they now are, the minutes will be reflected on our website as both the minutes in the format that we're normally used to, and also the transcript, which once again, is going to take us a little while to create, especially depending on how long the debate is tonight. We will continue our practice of posting the minutes. Joining us here at the library, Betty Sue Miller, the director, is here. Mike Magnuson, who is one of the librarians and is doing the tech control of tonight's meeting and also helping those of us that need assistance, like Gloria at the moment. And Megan Pecoraro is our recording secretary. So now we will go to our agenda, which is available in the packet that you can download from the library website, or was also emailed out to everyone today, except I made a mistake on the email and Gloria had to get her copy from somebody else. Mea culpa, that is 100% my typing error. So that agenda is there. Are there adjustments that any of the trustees would like to suggest? Hearing none, would someone like to move the agenda as presented?
I'll move the agenda as presented.
Okay, Linda moves it and Dan seconds it. Are there any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So ordered. Thank you very much. Okay, because we're in the COVID scenario, we do not have members of the public available at this meeting. We are looking at, if we have to do this again, we will create some mechanism so that we can have input from the community for our meetings, but not for this one. So the public forum opportunity is not available at this particular meeting. Now, for the members of the trustees, any questions for Betty Sue Miller, the director, from the prior written updates? And there have been many of them as we've done the preparations for opening and closing and sanitizing and that sort of stuff. And then I believe, Betty, so you have one or two items to talk about. So let's do questions first.
Betty Sue,
Yes.
have you figured out what you're going to do with the bathroom part?
Yes, no, we have not, but we are working on that. The recommendation I have received is that we find something that can be used to spray the surfaces that does not have to be removed. And I'm trying to how to have someone responsible for that. You've got something. Do you want to send me an email on it?
I will send you an email on something that you'll have to put in a spray thing, but it will clean surfaces. It's a disinfectant.
That's exactly what we're looking for.
That
the next thing we're trying to figure out for that is those bathrooms are going to need to be sprayed after every usage. Otherwise, we can't maintain the sanitation of them. So once we figure out how to sanitize, we're going to have to figure out how to keep track of when it needs to be done. So any suggestions on that, I'm more than welcome to receive. And thank you. If you could send me that in an email, that would be perfect, Joyce.
I'll do that.
One
Thank
of
you.
one of the places that I was talking, or a person I was talking with, and he was filling me in on some of the things that we need to be really careful and aware of. As it sounds kind of gross, but with bathrooms, and we don't have certainly the urinal, but the stalls, because we don't have covers on the toilets. One of the things that they've discovered is that there's a fine mist every time you flush, particularly because we have high density flushes that can spew 12 droplets 12 feet in the air. So he said to be extremely careful and very aware of that as you talk about use of the bathrooms.
Okay. Okay.
Right. That's right. And you know, it's just unfortunate that we don't have lids, because lids are meant to stop that backsplash that is generated when you flush a toilet. You know, in our homes, we have the lids, and technically when you get up, whether you're one or two, your lid should be down when you flush, and then the spray does not escape the toilet. But most institutions don't have that safety net. So my only concern is that with the
We certainly
constant
have
spraying
access to
between
plumbers and
the
mechanical
corrosion of
contractors.
metals
We could reach
in the
out and
stalls.
see what those options are for us. And the other thing, and
Excuse me,
yeah,
on this
you have
letter,
some information.
Based
I
on
the-
think we might reach out to one or more of the schools. For
Did the bathrooms have,
recommendation on, I mean, 40 years ago, when I was there, we were looking at a quaternary, what they call a quaternary cleaner, which was a halogen, and that's exactly what we did, was we sprayed it. They actually scrubbed the bathrooms only once or twice a day, but the rest of the time they went in with the knapsack sprayer and sprayed everything top to bottom.
Well,
So that does
actually,
give us a couple of things to look at.
excuse me, hold on a second.
I'll talk to Betty Stu about it.
There's an option. There's an option on here to raise your hand during the meeting, so we're not trying to talk over everybody. It's on the side of the screen that you're looking at. And one thing, do the bathroom doors have locks on them?
Yes.
You mean so that you
Oh, so we
could
could
lock
just
the bathroom
create
for
a
privacy?
bathroom-
Yes.
Correct. So no, not for privacy, so that if someone were to use the bathroom, they'd have to get the key, come back with the key, and then you'd know it'd have to be cleaned.
We have discussed that. That is one of the options.
Okay.
What's up for?
Other questions from Betty Sue's prior reports? Betty Sue, there were one or two things that you were going to update us on tonight?
Yes. Two things that I have received information on since this report went out. One is we received 2 bids to do the driveway resealing for this year, and I have had Ron Tower complete the contact of Jayco, who will do this for, I think it was, I didn't bring it with me, or did I? Yes, for $2,750. There was a second quote for $4,475. And from what Ron tells me, the person said they used a much higher grade of sealant. If we are looking at having the driveway torn up within the next 2 years, it doesn't make sense to me to worry about how long the sealant will last. So I opted, because it is within my price range and is with a previous vendor, to go ahead and have Ron contact Jayco and get this started, and hopefully it can be done before we reopen. Oh, and the other thing I did is I have had a, I don't know, I think somebody's trying to ask a question.
we
not.
talked about surfacing the driveway as we did with the first half. So we're due next year or the year after that to do the western half of that. We certainly don't want to do it until the construction across the street is done, because no matter what we do, they are going to run people and trucks through there. But the point being that if we're going to do, honest to goodness, repair and paving, then it doesn't behoove us to then turn around and cover up the ceiling. So that the 2-year sealer will do fine, and the time after that, we might be looking for the 4 or 5 year runway sealer.
Is that clear? Okay. The other thing that was asked was about the mural in the Curtis room. I have communicated with Stacy Kirby today. She has not been able to do it while we are shut down because she has childcare issues with a toddler. She would like to get it done in June. I have said we will need to talk with her and with Jimmy Babcock, whose scaffolding is still here. So hopefully I will be able to inform you within the next week of when that will take place. But please know it is ongoing. Those are the only 2 things I had written down in addition to the reopening document.
Okay, and I think that there's probably time later on when we get to the resolution about reopening to talk about that, if that's applicable to the trustees. Okay, if there are no more questions about Betty Sue's reports, then we'll move on to the minutes and the treasurer's reports. The March 11th minutes went out. Gloria did some significant editing, and that came to us today. I hope you have copies of that. I did not send those out. I'm pretty sure she sent them out to everybody.
She did.
Shall we begin the conversation with her notes? Do you want to accept those, or do you want to go through them individually?
I have an addition. I have another change.
Okay.
It's in relationship to tightening up the policy for investments to keep this area in compliance under the radar. Gloria also added in her red, and I also added that I asked if Bonadeo Group had any sample policies that we might use. And we have not, to my knowledge, we have not received that, but I think we should direct the
That
director
inquiry
to
was
contact
made.
them.
We have not received anything back yet. I'm sorry, Tari, I was talking over you. We did make that inquiry, and it's been 8 weeks or so now. We have not received anything on that, but that's certainly worth a follow-up. We had another accounting type question that came up today, so we'll bundle those together. Terry, did you have others, or just to reiterate that?
I just had that addition.
Okay, then what's your pleasure? I mean, Gloria's done some serious work on her notes. Do you want to accept that as the perfected minutes? Are there other things you want to do? I would prefer that we not do deletions to hers, A, because she did a lot of work, and B, because I don't want to do it word by word on a 7-page document.
Well,
Go ahead, Joyce.
I think, you know, as being the originator of the minutes, and as I read through, and as I noticed that most of the editing is around changes in or projected changes or looks at policy issues. Now, it may be just me. I'm okay with the red editing. In all honesty, for my part, some of the things that are there may have been implied, but I may not have heard them as they're written. But I'm okay with accepting the intent from that.
Okay.
So my
Gloria, you had your hand up?
I did. I
I'm
had my
sorry.
hand
Gloria
up.
had her hand up.
What I did when I was going
Gloria?
over the minutes today, what I did, I referred to the audit. So the wording that you see in the red came exactly from the audit. I mean, it was indicated in the minutes, but some of it was confusing the way it was written. So and the auditor did go over this with us. So what I did, if you have your audits, you look at it, and the ones that's the red, the wording is in the audit.
I have a question.
So when I did the minutes based on what was actually heard, even though the audit may have gone into this detail. That is the only thing that I'm saying, that I'm okay with it, but the verbiage as it is stated there may not have necessarily been the verbiage that was used in the meeting, even though it was in the booklet. So I'm okay with it being there, but that's the difference between the actual minutes and the meeting versus the additional materials supplied at the meeting that we took and extrapolated into the minutes. So I'm okay with it because it is in the book. But you know, the understanding is that they did not necessarily say this out loud at the meeting.
Okay, thank you. Linda Weller?
So I wasn't at that meeting, but my understanding is you can't add things to the minutes that were not talked about explicitly during the meeting. And I understand what Mrs. Riley had just said, and I agree with her to the point where, yes, it might have been, that was the intent, but it wasn't actually part of the actual minutes. So if I don't know if you could do it, take them back out and say, here's clarification points on A, B, C, and D, and here's what that section actually meant. But to put it as the minutes when it wasn't actually said in the meeting, I don't know if you can do that.
Okay.
I would prefer that it is done the way that I would like to see, you know, except for in the first one where it's a grammar thing, I obviously left off full-time employees. But for the red, where clearly the language is the language maybe of the document, to have those put in italics and with a notation, clarification from the Bonadicio Group's brochure, you know, so that we understand that it's a clarification, but that it in actuality was not something that was, you know, am I making sense?
Yes, it's a sensical combination. Let me tell you that
still in the minutes, but it's stated properly as a clarification from the brochure of the recommendation.
let me suggest, it's not really a compromise. My training in Robert's rules, which is different from the school board and from the town and from everybody else, is that the minutes do not represent intent. They represent what you actually did. Who did the motion, who did the presentation, who voted which direction, that sort of thing, who you received information from. What we can do is we could adopt minutes for that March meeting without the interpretation portion and have part of the minutes for this meeting reflect that we expanded the conversation and that Mrs. Riley wanted to make sure that everybody knew that this is what it really meant, that the language was stronger in the presentation than we actually talked about. That way, we're not putting intent into the minutes of the meeting that happened 2 months ago, but we are accurately reporting that at our May 13th meeting, there was some follow-up conversation at the time we discussed the minutes.
That's.
I don't know if that.
I think that's the intent that I was trying to get at. That Mrs. Riley had said as well. Kind of, it wasn't what it was talked about, but here's kind of a clarification. It shouldn't be in the minutes, but I am, well, if we put it in here and then put the addendum on.
The reason that I'm actually even mentioning this is because I don't want the precedence where when you take minutes, someone gets an opportunity to reinterpret what was said, edit, in a sidebar.
Well, you're absolutely right. That
So,
also is clearly part of the Roberts rules,
right.
is that
So,
you're not supposed to interpret it. You're supposed to report it.
And it's not that there's a thing in the red there's nothing I disagree with. It's just the whole process of it. Had this been said, I have no problem with doing it, but only because you extrapolated it from the brochure to clarify what was said at the meeting, but that wasn't really said, is what presents a problem. I do think maybe at the end of these minutes, if we take out the red and then we just put that clarification, and put the red things at the very end, say that these are clarifications for items within the minute that was in the brochure for further clarification.
Linda, I'm sorry.
Sorry.
Yes, please, go ahead.
Because if you don't attach them to this particular minute meetings, then putting them in this month's minutes will sort of decrease the effectiveness of the intent of the clarification. So if we let them know that this is not part of the minutes, these are just clarifications.
We're getting a little bit of field because in the normal scheme of things where there are no questions about the minutes, you do not put annotations at the end and say our further conversation was, which is why I suggested that we do that as part of this meeting's minutes, because clearly it's been part. Once again, I'm just a protector of the process is all. It appears to me that we get it both ways. If we say, okay, these were the minutes, and this is what we said, and then we report that at this meeting, we had an expanded conversation and wanted to reiterate that we wanted the intent to be the language from the Bonadillo audit.
What does Debbie, Dan, and
if you don't mind, I have raised my hand. I would just
No, go ahead, Gloria.
I would just like to say, when I was going over the minutes, and what caught my eye was a lot of times, I was the secretary, and you think you hear one thing, and when you're trying to type the minutes, it's not actually what was said, because the auditor was there and he went over each section with us. And the one bullet where it states that also the director, no, that's not the one. The recommendation is that the director go into the payroll system to confirm that any pay rate changes are what she requested and was approved. The conversation didn't go like that. And that's what had me, you know, so you could do it, you know, I agree with you, Joyce, but I just seem to think if we're going to put minutes out, that, you know, because a lot of times we can interpret something totally different. And then, and if we're talking about the audit, which we were doing, and he did go over each detail, and when you're doing minutes, sometimes it's hard to gather when he's talking the words, but he did go over each detail with us.
He did, but he did not go over to the level of detail that was expressed. And I do agree with you that that part about the Gloria, that part about the director reviewing the salary in the system, you're right. When I read your interpretation, I said, she's right. I did miswrite that.
So can we, I'm trying to see if anyone else had their hand up.
Terry Wilbur.
No, I'm looking on the screen. Sorry, I'm looking on the blue.
I don't. What is? I don't know what that is. I look at some of the things that Gloria put, and I do remember that there was discussion. For instance, the recommendations is that the director go into payroll. I remember asking the question: is the board supposed to vote on pay increases for all the employees? And he basically said that we can, but it's not a necessity. Also, about the level of compensation should be voted. I think that was what I was looking at. I believe there was something, and now I can't remember. I lost my train of thought, but there was an additional thing that I asked. We need to understand that the minutes are not a verbatim transcript. They just aren't.
Right.
And in some places, you know, they just say so-and-so made a motion, so-and-so second, there was discussion, it's passed, and this is the way the vote is, and they have very little, they're very skeletal. So I really don't have a problem with keeping the things that Gloria said, because I think, well, the investment policy, you know, I definitely remember having more discussion than what is there. So if Gloria took notes or has other things, you know, and they correctly reflect what's going on, so be it. Because it's not an exact transcript. It's not like a trial or anything of that nature. Like I said,
that's true, but your minutes are supposed to be an accurate reflection of the business that was transacted, so that a trustee, a member of the public 5 years down the road can go back and say, what did they do in April? And that's one of the reasons we try to condense and not have the transcript. I mean, there was a period of time when we effectively had a transcript. Kevin said this, Terry said that, and Joyce said this. And that for the long term, that's not, nobody really cares who said something. What they're interested in is somebody moved that we spend X number of dollars out of this particular line item to do the following things. Those are the kinds of things that not only the future observers are looking for, but also the auditor and the bank and that sort of stuff. Linda, I'm sorry, you had your hand up?
Yeah, I'm going to take my hand back down right now. I have a problem with rewriting the minutes. I mean, I think Mrs. Riley did a good job of capturing the intent. And if we can do an addendum in this month's meeting to say, hey, here's some clarifications if we need it of all the stuff in red. But if we try and go back and rewrite every meeting, this is going to be a long process. We haven't done it in the past. We've stayed away from it in the past. You know, I think it's going to be a bad practice. Whoever
It,
the notes,
it,
sorry, Joyce. Whoever
That's
takes
all right.
the notes tries to do the best that they can, and then who writes the minutes, either fills in or expands as much as they can of the notes, remembers it, and gathers it in a discernible way.
A functional manner.
Yes.
Gloria, did you have your hand up or that?
I did. I'm not trying to, I just want to make a note. I'm not trying to rewrite the minutes at all. I agree with everything that I've heard. I was just saying when I was reading the minutes that a lot, to me, some of it wasn't mentioned and I just had interpreted totally different. So I'm not trying to rewrite the minutes. And if you want to leave it the way it is, it's just fine. I was told to read them, make comments, and that's what I did.
Okay. All right. Let's see. Linda, you're actually the corporate secretary, right?
Yeah.
You know what?
Can I
I
ask
realize
Mr.
that.
Conrad?
But in terms of this meeting, then will you be able, with Megan's notes, to just create a paragraph or two and say, discussion continued, not necessarily verbatim, every word for word that Gloria has put in the red, but so we don't lose the intent of, we need to do an investment policy. We need to do this. We need to do the other thing.
I'd like to hear, what does Mr. Conrad think? What do the other board members think of this? Do they have an opinion?
Dan?
Yeah, sorry, I was just.
No, that's okay. Relative to the minutes, tell me how you feel, which direction you might think of going.
I would say just keep the minutes as they normally were, as if we were there, like everybody's saying, just keep, don't amend and not really amend it, but don't change it. Just keep it how it is. Just
Hey,
keep
Debbie?
in there what we talked about.
Well, I do know that Gloria is one of the most meticulous people I have ever met, and she
Agreed.
remembers things, and she uses that she knows the book. And so, I really think that she has done everything that she has for the benefit of the library. So the fact that she made those changes, it took a lot of time. If there's a way to incorporate it somehow, that's great. If we just add an addendum to say, because I think it is a good thing to capture the information, even if it's, and I agree with you, Linda. We're not going to go back and do that for every single meeting from, day one, but the fact that she's done that kind of work should be acknowledged and should be captured someplace.
Sorry, Kevin, or Mr. Doherty. I'm not trying to discount what you did. Yes, it gave me great clarification while reading it. My only issue is it wasn't the minutes actually taken. You know what I mean?
Okay.
There are lots of things every meeting that people leave out because it's supposed to capture the intent of it. So I am more than happy to pass the meetings the way they are and put a note in this meeting saying, hey, here's clarification for this meeting, like line item number C. This is the intent of what it was, and go from there. That's all I'm trying to say. She did it gave me, more understanding, but I'm just worried about rewriting the actual true meeting.
Okay, Joyce?
The truth of the matter is, if Gloria had not sent out this corrected the way it is right here, if she had come to the meeting and went section by section and brought this up, all of this would have been a non-issue. I think what made me take another look at it was that some of this stuff for me was implied. It wasn't said or stated specifically. The one thing that was stated specifically that was in here that when Gloria said it at the meeting, I says, you know what? She's actually right. That was how that went. That was, to me, a correction because I did write it wrong. But the rest of it, I felt was not even the verbiage of the people talking at the meeting, which is what made me say, well, I don't remember hearing that because that verbiage was not the verbiage I heard at the meeting. It sounds more like it was extrapolated from somewhere. It was the process on the director going in, reviewing the raises. I had that process. It wasn't clear, and she definitely had it clarified. But the rest of it, I think, is definitely worthy of clarification. I will go with whatever the group decides. I'll be okay with it.
Okay. Well, I mean, it's great to have the conversation, but we're 25 minutes into a conversation
Yes.
about the minutes. So who would like to make a motion?
Could I
Dan.
just, a point of order?
Oh, I'm
I
sorry.
just want a point of order, just a reminder that committee reports also are a part of the minutes and should be attached to them. So, and there were 2 committee reports actually on March 11th? Yeah. And not that they have to be included in our minutes, but they should be attached to the minutes on the library website.
Okay, thank you. I'm sorry, Dan? Dan, did you have your hand up to make a motion or to make a comment?
Oh, just to make the motion.
All right, and the motion is to accept the minutes as they were presented with those 2 or 3 clerical adjustments?
Yes.
Okay. And the intent, not to be put down as part of the, is that we will include in the minutes for this May 13th meeting, a squib that says that at the time we reviewed the minutes, there was a conversation about including the language of the audit report. Are we comfortable with that?
Yes, I am.
Yes.
Comfortable enough for someone to second that?
Okay, can I have a clarification? So we're
Yes.
gonna approve the minutes as they are with a few clerical adjustments with the statement that we're gonna take out the audit things and put them as an addendum on this meeting.
Well, so the minutes on which we are actually voting are the original minutes, the ones without Gloria's red marks.
May I just for a second?
Yes.
Okay, so what I have, and I just want to make sure that it's correct, is that Dan made the motion to approve the minutes with clerical adjustments. Should it also be and the statement added by Terry?
No, I mean, I believe Mr. Wilbert's comment was an editorial comment that when we are cleaning this up, we need to make sure that those 2 committee reports that were presented on March 11th, let me just confirm.
I'm sorry, that's not the one I was talking about. His original comment where he, under tightening up the policy investments, that he requested projections be, or he said that he requests projections from the Bonadio Group.
I believe that's covered on the second part. After we've approved the minutes with the clerical,
Thank you.
then the suggestion will be made, and it can either be a suggestion or a motion, that the items that are outlined by Gloria's red marks should be included at the minutes portion, but not specifically a part of the minutes alone of this March 13th meeting.
I just wanted to make sure that one was still there.
And I'm sorry, I've cut off Linda Weller. Go ahead.
Oh, no, I just wanted to make sure we're clear on what we're actually voting on.
Okay. Did we ever have a second? No. On our perfected motion? Any volunteers?
I will, all
As there's
right, I
not a
will
second, then
second
the motion
the,
fails.
Actually, Linda can't second the motion because she wasn't here, but I will second it.
Okay. So Dan has made the motion, Terry has seconded it. Is there any further discussion? I hope not. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So ordered, thank you. Okay, 2 treasurers' reports, March and April. Gloria had a couple of questions about extraordinary expenses. I believe those were answered in an email earlier today. Is that correct?
Betty Sue said she'll get back in touch with me by Friday, right, Betty Sue?
No.
Well, as I understand it, the response was, we know what they are. They're the work in this room, and the specific dollar amounts is what we can't pull out. We can't pull it out of QuickBooks.
Right.
Were there other questions about either of the 2 months' treasurer's reports? Would someone like to move that we adopt either together or individually the treasurer's reports from March and April? There's choice.
I move that we adopt the treasury report for March and April.
March and April.
And I'll
Is there a
second.
second?
I'll second.
That's
Debbie.
Debbie. Is there any further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? So ordered. Thank you. Okay, into committee reports. The Nominations and Elections Committee is the only one that was really busy. And if it's all right with the committee, can we defer that conversation till we get to the point about reopening and other forward-thinking issues? Or would you like to go over your report now?
It would be fine with me. I don't know about Gloria and Debbie, but it'd be fine with me if we talk about it all as a group toward reopening.
It's okay with me.
Okay, Debbie?
Yep, me too.
Okay, then we will move on. And there are a number of resolutions. I think there are 7 of them. These are suggested. I mean, I know a couple of you have called me and said, what are you trying to do? What I'm trying to do is streamline things so that we get all of the details that we need to about dates and costs and authorizations and that sort of stuff. I'm just going to take them in order. The first is that we plan for our opening, that the director is authorized to plan and implement it. Our goal is to provide full patron services, but we need to do it under the advisement of the county health department. I understand that there are a number of inputs, the governor's office and the reopen the region and that sort of thing. However, it is my observation, and you can certainly debate that, and Betty Sue can kick in, that Paul Pettit and the Orleans/Genesee County Health Department have provided the most practical information about how it impacts us at this library in Albion without having to interpret what the governor's intent was and the like. Betty Sue, is that a fair statement?
I think so. In talking with a number of the places under which we fall for information, Nioga, the Genesee Finger Lakes, our health department, the directors groups, the information is most clearly presented to us by the health department, who in my mind should be our go-to to do this properly.
Okay, you will note as you go through a number of them that some of the verbiage is the same, and that's a typical Kevin thing, that these plans must utilize existing staff. You can't hire anybody else. That you can't spend more money than we have in the budget lines, which in the event of any transfer would require some additional trustee action.
I would be opposed to the implementation. The reason is originally the trustees closed the library, and I feel we should be the ones who open it. But talking with some of the people, there are potential litigation in all of these things. For instance, if an employee comes down with COVID-19 and they felt that we did not safely provide them with the correct amount of PPE or whatever it might be, or they were asked to do something they weren't comfortable with and they did it because they didn't want to create waves, we have a litigation. There's also, we have to deal with the fact that there are going to be people who, either employees or the public, who either refuse, and we have to decide, there'll have to be a decision, what kind of what are we going to do if somebody refuses? And the other side of that, what happens if somebody has a doctor's note saying that they shouldn't wear protective masks for whatever reason? A lot of time it's claustrophobia or panic attacks. But I think if we do anything where there's potential litigation, I think the board has to have a voice, because we can't say, oh, our director did that. We have to speak with a very loud voice that the board supported this.
Other comments?
I kind of agree that if we're the ones that agreed to close it down, we should also be the ones that say we're going to open it up. And that may not necessarily wait until we have a monthly meeting. We could always call a special meeting, providing there's enough data and information that says it's time to open up. It does free the director from any blame if there's someone that for some reason thinks that she was trying to just get everyone exposed. It won't be that kind of a party. It'll be that the board said, we need to close down for safety. We're going to open up because our director has done enough to make sure that we feel that it's safe enough to open, and we're behind it. So I agree with Kevin that
No, you don't agree with Terry, because you don't agree with
Terry.
me.
I agree with Terry that that's a onerous responsibility to lay at the feet of the director should something negative transpire.
Well, let me suggest
Can
that
I
there are a
jump
couple of
in?
things. No, you'll have to wait your turn.
Okay.
Let me suggest that there are a couple of faulty portions of that logic. First of all, the trustees determined to close down. They did not tell Betty Sue, you will do this and you will do that and you will do something else. And you will do this and you will do that and we will check on that. We said we're going to close down, and all I want you to do is say we're going to open up. Secondly, individual trustees, unless they bring specific knowledge and experience with them, have not lived through this and are only going to parrot the information that we have from other people, many of whom are not anywhere connected with Orleans County, which is why the suggestion is we use the health department. They've been very good about what you can do and what you can't do, about recommendations for cleaning and whether or not we have to have the plexiglass guards. Relative to litigation, whether we bless each individual segment or not, if we're going to be sued, we're going to be sued. As our litigation attorney, our attorney says we just need to do a good faith effort that's consistent with that's being done by other agencies. I mean, it's entirely up to you, but I think we're being foolish to inject the board personally into these. I also have to suggest that there are individual members of the board who have personally injected themselves as representatives of the trustees and the library who are not. Individual members are 1/11 of the decision-making process. And then a certain number of us have titles that allow us to do things. But we're missing the boat if we are saying we're going to micromanage this. That's what we pay the director for. And it's up to you guys. Do what you want to do. It sounds like there are two people who will not support this resolution. So far, it's not even on the table.
Can I make a statement now, or do you just want me to still wait?
You may.
Okay.
A brief conversation.
It will be very brief. I do not have a problem with the board approving the date to begin reopening once I have presented it to them based on the information that I receive from the health department and our lawyers and everybody else. I would be happy to have the board say, make a resolution to open as of this day. To be given all the directions on how I'm supposed to do that is hugely insulting. End of comment.
Okay, I have something that I wanted to say because
Hold on.
That's
Time
not
out.
what, that's
This
not what.
motion is not on the floor, so we've already had more discussion than we're supposed to have. If no one is comfortable moving it, then we will stop and move on.
what I was saying was, I'm not talking about us coming up with the plan.
No.
If some of us have input, that's fine. What I'm saying is when the plan is developed, that because it will be a policy kind of thing, that the board must pass it.
I don't think so.
Well, I'm saying I think so, and I'm a board member.
All right, I'm done.
Because it's going to be policy decisions.
I think it's
Operational
procedure.
decisions. The policies have already been made.
No, they haven't, because this is going to be something brand new.
So,
For instance, if we say no one can come into the library without a mask, and unless they have a doctor's note, we need to memorialize that. If the decision, if someone refuses to work because they feel unsafe, although that's covered by certainly by what the governor has said at this point in time, we need to memorialize that. We need to make sure that we have policy, not procedure.
I'm gonna interject.
I'm sorry. Go
Wait,
ahead,
Kevin, hold. I want to interject because we're not going to be able to make policy on anything because this is going to be a fluid situation from now until possibly the beginning of next year if we get another wave. If we set a policy, then we're going to keep writing policy after policy as things happen to change. I believe, and I think, looking at all the state guidelines, the state governances, we're going to have to do what they're telling us to do. We're not going to have that opportunity to keep changing policy. If the governor now decides that, hey, we're going to have to do this, are we going to rewrite our policy each time a new change comes up? I don't feel comfortable doing that because I want to go off what the CDC and medical experts are telling us, not off what a policy that we created at this minute minute in time. I mean, so far as in my own company, we've had to change 6 times already of what we're supposed to do. And I can't imagine as a library being open in all these different aspects. I'm hoping that the library is staying on top of and in touch with the health department and every guideline that comes down from the state. And I just don't want to try and write policies around it because we're going to have to meet, we're going to have to write a policy, and by the time we approve it, unless we have special meetings all the time, this is going to be a never-ending circle. End of my statement.
Our
Sorry.
most recent practice has been that we don't do much in the way of policy, unless it's a simple tweak, changing from Swan to Hoag, for example, unless we involve the attorney. And I'm sure they're available, but do we need to do that? These are clearly operational things. Joyce?
There's one little thing that would make this first resolution okay with me, where it says authorize the director to plan for and implement the gradual reopening of the library as determined by the board in for full patron services. So that takes, we don't have to do the plan or implement it, but that we are, it puts us there. You see what I'm saying? As determined by
I
the board.
understand the
So, because
verbiage.
we're going to set the date.
I don't understand the process. I don't understand the process because we haven't defined a process. After a prior board review, or I guess Terry, did you have your hand up? Or was that
No,
it?
no, Gloria's had her hand up. I can see her on the side.
Oh, I'm
She's had
sorry.
her hand
I'm
up for a
sorry,
while.
Gloria.
That's okay. What I was just going to say was that I agree that Betty Sue can make plans for the reopening of the library. However, and Betty Sue had stated it, and once she had made the plan, she would present it to the board and then for board approval for the reopening. That's how I see it. Betty Sue makes the plan, present it to, makes the plan, present her plan to the board pending approval by the board for the reopening.
So
I-
how
I-
are we
I
going,
think-
okay. So tell me how the approval works. Email,
Well, I
do we have another Zoom meeting?
Well, we could have a Zoom meeting, but I just think that the board needs to be involved, Kevin, in as far as approving the opening date.
And
That's how I feel.
I'm
The
going under the
reality is-
assumption that we're going to be constantly updated and notified as things progress and change. I don't think this is going to be a hidden thing. I would like to know personally as a board member that, hey, this is the date that we plan on opening. I would love that information, and I would love to say, okay, or love to see this is the plans, and this is when we plan to open based on state guidelines. We're in the Finger Lakes region. We're not going to open until phase 4. We don't even know what date that is. So, and whatever we decide on now could change by the time we get to phase 4 opening. So as a board member, I would like to be updated along the way as you guys find out different things. And then as far as the reopening date, yes, as a board, I believe we should all know. And I believe we should say, oh,
Yes.
okay, here's the plans and here's that. And even if we have a quick little meeting or something like that, send it
Exactly.
out. And, you know, just, it doesn't have to be simple, but we should all be in the same Zoom room and
Okay.
getting the same information at once.
That's right.
I have no problem with the resolution the way it is, as long as the board is informed. We have a tentative date whenever you guys get it, and some sort of semblance of these are the state guidelines. I don't care about all the details of it, but the state says we have to do X, Y, and Z, and this is what we're going to do. And
So tell me how we're going to perfect the motion. We can eliminate and implement. That allows Betty Sue to plan for the gradual reopening. Our principal advisor is going to be the county health department. And you can't use additional staff or budget lines. You can put a line in there about
No.
continuing to update the board. I'm sorry, Joyce,
No, go ahead.
no, that's, I mean, tell me what you want to do.
I agree with that, because then it allows us to memorialize it. I would eliminate the part about using existing staff. We don't know, and I don't want to hamstring it. We don't know, but some people have suggested that places may have to get security guards, although obviously I think it was North Carolina that didn't work so well. You know, if people are not being cooperative with wearing masks, if that's one of the requirements. I don't want one of our staff members to have to get into a confrontation with a client. And as somebody pointed out, what happens if you have a mother and she's got a 2 and a 4-year-old and they're running around and mom doesn't have a mask on, and you know, we need to, you know, these are things is going to have to be dealt with. And we may, I want to take that out, because we may find that we may have to hire additional staff to help deal with those specific kinds of things. We don't know what's going to happen. You know, I think people around here have been very, very cooperative. But on the other hand, I think we need to be careful of our staff, but also of our other patrons. You know, I would hate for one of our older patrons to be working at a computer and somebody come in and make a whole big deal because they didn't want to wear a mask, or they didn't want to have their temperature taken. So, and you know, I think I'm just concerned that if we say not using existing staff and then we find out we may have to get somebody to help with that kind of thing, the director and we need to have that flexibility.
I see two ways to deal with that. And that would be to leave it as it is, take out the implement part, leave it as it is. And clearly, if we require security, that, Terry, is a policy thing because we don't have a policy for having security in the building. And so clearly that has to come back to the board. Or we take the existing staff. Do you want to leave budget lines in? I
No,
mean, I was just trying to hem in. I don't want it to be carte blanche, but I also don't want to be a micromanager. So are we generally agreed that we're going to just take out the two words in the second line and implement? I see lots of nods. I can't see Debbie. Is that how are you on that?
I'm nodding.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, pictures still.
Okay. So
Can I
then,
toss one
and-
more thing in about security?
yes.
I'm sure there can be issues anywhere, and we have certainly had our share of issues here. I have made myself the face of issues because I don't want the staff to have to deal with it. And we also have had a very good relationship with the police departments. I don't see any reason we can't assume that we can continue, that if a staff member is feeling uncomfortable, that I'm the one who deals with it, or the police are called immediately.
So I'm reminded of Linda's comment that we don't know what we're going to have to do
That's right.
between now and December. We may get a directive that says you have to have. And
Absolutely.
it has to be somebody who is a peace officer, not necessarily police, all that sort of stuff.
But until then, I'm comfortable handling it.
Well, the only problem with that is if someone's belligerent, it's not the type of thing where, you know, they're going to go off into the stacks or something. They're going to be met at the door. And we aren't saying we have to hire security at this point in time.
No, I understand that. I understand. But what, so
I
your
don't
point,
want to put staff or you in that position of having to deal with that right away. We've got some time to think about it. So, but you know, we need to be very cautious, I'm sure.
now we're cheating because this actually hasn't been proposed as a motion yet, but what I have so far is on the second line, we're taking out the words and implement. So it's planned for the gradual reopening of the Hoag Library for full patron services. And in the last line, using existing budget lines. So I'm taking out, striking the two words staff and.
Yes.
Is that, okay, so somebody move that.
I'll make a motion to move.
Okay, those are the two corrections from the written.
Yeah, so I was about to say I'd make a move with those two removal.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second it.
Let's not all do it at once. Okay, and Terry seconds it. You have that. Is there further discussion on the first resolution? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And
Aye.
any opposed? Okay, so that motion carries. Betty Sue,
Yes.
do you have any questions from the conversation about what is expected of you?
I don't think so. I'm
Okay.
going to assume that I am going to keep working on the same type of stuff that I've been sending the reports out on with the steps we will take and whatever, understanding that it is the board who does policy and I do procedures. So all I'm looking for is the procedures that we will follow. And every time I get communications, whether it is from our legal advisors or the state or the health department, there are little tweaks to them. So I see this being an ongoing process and nothing is in stone forever. Is
Okay.
that logical to those of you on the board?
Relative to board knowledge/transparency, unless there's something major like, hey, we got the message that we have to be open 100% on Monday. I mean, that's not going to happen. But if there's something major like that, the Thursday or Friday update, or sometimes it's the Saturday update.
Today was Saturday.
Are those updates timely enough to create a comfort level for the trustees?
yeah,
Okay, Debbie, which way are you nodding?
I'm nodding, yeah.
Okay, okay, just checking, okay, all right. All right, then we move on to the second one. And that really is, we just want to make it easy for elections to run. There has been some conversation. I know Betty Sue has been talking with the Board of Elections relative to what do we have in terms of social distancing, and if the library's not open, can we do lines and trails and that sort of thing? Recognizing that this is a town function, and so we're actually being collaborative with the town. Is there any concern or question about using the library for it's a primary / special election, which takes place on June 23rd. This is the normal Town of Albion polling place for all 6 districts.
So if I could talk a little bit about it, because I've been talking with the Board of Elections and the town, both. Really, the only thing that the library has to provide is access to the library. None of the staff has to be involved. They're still trying to determine who will be in charge of disinfecting afterwards. There was some concern when Scott Bennett and Rich Nenny bring in the voting
machines.
Huh?
The voting machines and
Voting.
all the carols.
Whether they had to be, whether it had to be cleansed again, but that really comes down to the Board of Elections, what they're going to do. They're still getting things from the Department of Health and from the state. So it really comes down to who's going to pay for the disinfecting, or is it going to be sufficient that the poll workers do it? The reality, from what I understand, there are 3,000 registered voters in the districts. They really don't know how many people will be attending, but really all we're doing with this is allowing them to use the library. They're going to provide they're using painter's tape to set up the the various things. They're going to create the flow. The only concern that I had was the bathroom. They felt that the only ones who'd be using the bathroom were the poll workers. And it is from 6 in the morning until 9 at night. So I'm sure they're going to be using them. So I just wanted to, because I'm on the town board as well, and we need to clarify who's going to be doing that.
Okay. So
That's not part of this resolution. So
actually, I was not concerned about the cleaning at all, because I assumed if I borrow your lawnmower, I wash it before I give it back to you.
We don't really need the using existing staff and budget lines, because the library will have to do nothing except open the door.
Okay. So you're striking that phrase?
Yep.
Is there anything else you suggest?
No.
Would you like to move it?
I will move.
I'm sorry, Gloria, your hand's up?
Oh, I'm going to put it down. I'll second.
Okay. That was why. You put your hand up so you could second it. Is there other conversation about this resolution? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Debbie, just for the record, are you
Aye. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so ordered. The next resolution is about summer reading. It is written that way because some of the library system people want us to run the exact summer reading program we talked about, and that's not possible. It just, who knows what we're going to do? I don't know if I can have kids in. I don't know when we can have kids in. Don't know if we can be outside. We do, however, have some resources in our children's librarian and also in her bag of tricks for a certain number of toys, prizes, games, that sort of stuff. The intent is that we want to run a summer reading program, but we have to recognize that this is a COVID-19 summer, so it ain't going to, Jimmy Babcock is not going to build us a playhouse to use this year. So everything we do is just going to be an adjustment. And so that there was, the only reason I put it on here was so that there was no question. And so that if Nioga or somebody says to Betty Sue, this is a national program. How come you don't have it ramped up? Because we have other things to do. And we're going to do what we can do.
I'm good with the
Yeah.
resolution the way it is, and I'll make a motion to approve it.
Okay, is there
I
a second?
second.
Joyce has the second. Is there other discussion? Debbie, I can't see you. Do you have a comment? I mean, I can see you. It's a very nice picture. And
Yeah.
actually looks much better than me, who, you know.
It's a picture from the 80s. Times have changed. But no, I was gonna second, but I got beat to it, you know?
Other conversation, any other discussion to make people comfortable? All in favor?
Aye.
Hi.
Opposed? Debbie, you're an aye?
He was an aye.
Okay, very good. That's so ordered. The next one, there was a conversation at the last board meeting that we had, and admittedly, that was 2 months ago, and some emails in the meantime. We have the NYSERDA grant ready to go. We are using the numbers from the Go Forth Electric quotation. I think Betty Sue sent us a note today that said she
I
was
did.
going to check with Nathan London at Go Forth Electric to see if the numbers were still good. This does not necessarily preclude bidding it after the grant is approved, but you have to have a real quote and real numbers from an approved contractor before you can even make the grant application. I made a mistake because, fortunately, I was working from my memory instead of from the notes. With the newer style, with the two-headed charging station in one location on the north side of the driveway between Liberty Street and where our little benches are, that part hasn't changed at all. What I did mess up was I thought the original quote was $6,500. It's $8,500. So I put those numbers in there just because there's a comfort level with folks to make sure that we provide some parameters. This is not a carte blanche. This is if it all falls through or all comes through, we can do it. And then there's a limit to what the library's contribution is. There are always incidentals that the grant will not cover. A bollard, painting.
Did you want to
a
know
sign.
did you want to know that I went to the NYSERDA site and verified that the amount that they are giving out is still the same, which is $4,000 per unit? On advice from someone I spoke to there, they said you might want to do this sooner than later because there may not be state money left for it.
Yeah.
So I also contacted Nathan London to see if his original quote, which I did send back out to you today, would still stand, and he checked with his suppliers, and the $8,800 he quoted will stand, which would leave the library responsible for about $800, which is under the $1,000 in this resolution.
Well, and as you may recall, we actually passed a resolution. We didn't have a dollar amount, but the Buildings and Grounds said that we were going to work with the Friends, because they have a lot of money, to cover any unforeseen costs that a grant might not cover. At the time in March, before this all happened, there was Green New York money, and we thought that we might be able to qualify for that. I think that's probably going to go down the toilet. The last I heard, the NYSERDA grants were on hold. Most of the NYSERDA grants are on hold at this point, but we should go through the process.
Which process?
Just as an aside,
And the NYSERDA grant.
Yeah.
Okay, well, the last directions I had were that this was going to be pursued by the Buildings and Grounds, and I hadn't heard anything, so I just went ahead and did what I did and figured we can take it from there.
Actually, at the last meeting, we talked about you applying for the NYSERDA grant, I think.
Well, it's been done.
just as an aside and for a piece of information, a lot of the work that I do is New York State grant funded, $5 million for a radio system and $2 million for 911 equipment and the like. And federal money that has already been remitted to New York State for that specific cannot be taken by New York State to do something else. So they told us if we have grant approval and they've already received the money at New York State, then they cannot hold it, and the feds will hold their feet to the fire. I don't know if this is the same category or not, but I do think it behooves us to be in the cattle call, the head of the line, rather than at the back of the line.
I agree.
I have one question. If we pass this resolution and everything, will these companies be able to work? Well, construction's supposed to be opening
Right.
up on
They
Friday.
were phase one. I asked that.
Okay, never mind.
Good
That-
question.
But if we can move on this quickly while phase one is still open in construction before we get a huge spike in numbers and everything might close down again,
Right.
I have no problem with it.
Are we familiar, does anyone have a question about the project, where it's going, how it's wired, that sort of stuff? Okay, then there is a correction in the next to the last line in here. On the printed copy, it says, so long as the total cost does not exceed $7,000. My fault, once again, mea culpa, using my brain and not the paperwork. That number should be $9,000.
Okay.
Okay, so
Correct, because
is-
the proposed cost is $85.55 on this one quote. So technically, it shouldn't, in all actuality, with anything, shouldn't cost any more than possibly 10 on because of incidentals or something. They're digging
and
up
for
a
that,
line.
I'm sure, as Terry's pointed out, the Friends, after they built the library, they're looking for something to spend their money on. So I'm sure we could, and do ribbon cuttings and put a little plaque on it, say thank for the Friends and that sort of stuff. But the important part for me was that we authorize moving forward on it. So is the motion yet on the floor?
No.
Whose turn is it?
I'll make the motion that we put it up to
Okay.
approve the resolution.
Debbie, would you like to second this one?
I would like to second this.
I think Gloria had it before, but that's okay.
Oh, well, we'll catch.
I saw you, Gloria.
That's okay.
Is there any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Hi.
Those opposed? So ordered, thank you. The bottom resolution on the first page, you know that all right, first of all, the library has a line of credit with Steuben Trust, Steuben County Bank, who is the holder of our first mortgage. It was originally a $250,000 line of credit, as I indicated in March. Because we're such a good customer and Barb is so anal about paying the bills as soon as they come in, our line of credit has been extended to $400,000. Right now, this minute, we owe zero because the only time we tap it is at that period between August and when we get the big check of the school tax levy. So this is a two-part, and we can do it as two resolutions. We can split it. We can do whatever you want to do because there hasn't been time to have a full finance committee meeting. I understand that. First is we want Barb to exercise. That is, even if we have money in the bank, we want to take some money out. As far as I'm concerned, it doesn't make any difference if it's 1 month's expenses, if it's 2 payrolls, so she can track it coming and going. But the second part is, you may know that the check that we normally get from the library or from the school district, the first or second week in October, when I have been running it down to the bank in Warsaw, that may not come until as late as December. The best advice we have from one of the accounting firms is that the school district will have to remit out before the first of the year, or there are different accounting things that they have to handle. So we will get the money, but we may not get it in October. So what we're doing is authorizing, if we need to borrow money, to make our regular bills. We do not limit it. We tell Barb to go ahead during the period that we're using the line of credit and pay all the creditors on time and pay all of the payrolls on time and do our purchasing like we normally do. Years and years and years ago, particularly when we were in the other building, they got real thin on paying things in late July, August, and September because they wanted to make sure they had enough money to make payroll. And so then, after they got the check in October, it was kind of spending like drunken sailors. Then they would do all of the major purchases for the year in that last couple of months. We have been able to avoid that because we use this line of credit like you're supposed to in a business, and use it as a forward cash flow project. So as I say, it can be however you want to do it. We just need to do something, and that is clearly, because we're talking big money, that is clearly a trustee issue.
I will make a motion that we approve the first resolution, because
Okay.
that's what we've always done in the past
Yep.
for the 50,000. And I think the second one should be separate, only because this is the area of COVID.
Okay. Then, if we split the two, that means A, we remove the "and be it further" from the first
Correct.
resolved. If it's okay, let me suggest that we add the same line that's at the bottom of the second one: such amount to be repaid in full upon receipt of the tax levy check. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, so you're adding what was in the last one to the first one.
That is correct,
Okay.
because when I combined them, I only did it once so that it wasn't redundant. Does that make sense to you?
Yes.
No,
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
I didn't,
Megan, you have that?
I didn't
Yeah.
follow. I'm sorry, I didn't follow.
Just so that everyone can hear me, sorry. So what I have is remove the words "and be it further" from the first resolution and add the line, and this is where I wanted to make sure I'm starting in the right place. All amounts be repaid is what we're gonna add?
Yes, in full
To the
upon
end?
receipt of the tax
Okay.
levy check.
Okay, and so that's just on the first resolution. We're removing "and be it further" and adding "all amounts to be repaid in full upon receipt of the tax levy check."
That's correct. Terry, I put the two as one resolution. Linda would like to do it as two resolutions, and so it just required the editing. I mean, I'm sure we would pay it back. It just seems cleaner if there's a direction to do that.
If the verbiage is there.
So Linda has moved it. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Gloria's
Gloria.
got it. Jumped right in there. Conversation, discussion? Terry, finance view?
Makes great sense.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Debbie, that was an aye, right?
That was an aye.
No, okay. So ordered then. Okay, now we're to the second part. I arbitrarily chose that number. I'm looking at our expenses are about $73,000 or $4,000 a month. With the exception of some of the insurances, most of our expenses are fairly level throughout the year. Some months you have 3 payrolls, some months you only have 2. There is an adjustment on that. I chose that number because I don't really think it's a good idea to authorize the transfer of the entire line of credit. Tell me what you'd like to do. And we can do this later in the year. You don't have to do this now. I combined them because they were both line of credit issues.
Again, we're talking about a fluid situation, and I would feel more comfortably weighted. We don't know if we have any savings from not being open for now 2 months, but we don't know what our expenses are going to be, because my guess is we may have higher expenses because we may have to get some materials and things like that. We just don't know what the future is. I think I just feel more comfortable if we waited until our September meeting to discuss this.
Okay. So the second part of that is just withdrawn. There's no action required. It's withdrawn. Okay. The next page. The first one is, I mean, we can argue about it, but it's one of those ones that's recommended by the attorney. Our paid time off policy is a board policy. It's not a collective bargaining agreement. and so what we're asking is that you authorize what we've actually done, what the past practice has been. When we closed the library, it was no longer necessary for anybody to take sick or vacation time because per the governor's executive order, those organizations that are pre-funded with tax money, that's us, had to continue people on payroll. So we have continued people on payroll. But because there's no way for you to burn it, it didn't seem fair that you would, for this period, which is now 2 months and maybe no longer, that you would continue to earn paid time off like you normally do. And I honestly can't tell you what the number is. It's a day and a quarter, day and a half a month, whatever the deal is. And paid time off includes your vacation and your sick time, all that sort of stuff. What the intent is that if I were an employee and I had 10 days and I was earning a day and a half a month, then that particular date, that March 22nd, it just froze. I had 10 days. We come out of COVID, we go back into full operation, it gets unfrozen and goes there. That's the intent. So it is a recommendation that we do this as a waiver of the policy. We don't want to change the policy. We want to, in an extraordinary circumstance, waive the policy, just like the school in the extraordinary circumstance of you want to run a football game on Sunday, you waive the we never do anything on Sunday rule, but you don't change the policy.
I remember coming about this in our that one meeting about that, and we had talked about it, and I wanted to have the attorneys take on it. So
I did.
good with.
I did.
No, I know that. That's how we came up with this. I'm
Okay.
good with this. I'm not sure if myself, I don't know what anyone else thinks.
I'm actually good with this.
I
too.
personally have not talked with any employees because, I mean, they're working from home. I don't see them very often. Personally, I look at this as no harm, no foul. You're not losing anything. And if you have a doctor's appointment during this period or something else, you don't use your paid time off because we're allowing people to flex schedule themselves for their own time. I'm sorry, Joyce, I cut you off.
No, that's all right. I actually agree with Linda on this. No harm, no foul on this. It's a win-win as far as I'm concerned. You know, you're not being penalized for not taking it. And at the same time, you're not earning any because you're not working full-time at the library, you know, in the building itself. So
And that will be one of those considerations when Betty Sue puts that plan that's going to be forward to all of us, is this is the day that, you know, or it may be during this week, as you come back, then the freeze is off and you go from there. Gloria, you're a human resources based person. Is this fair as far as you're concerned?
Yes, it's fair. And what I was going to say, so if it's my understanding that Betty Sue, that you did talk to the attorney.
Correct.
Right? Okay, and this is what they advise.
But
Okay.
what they did say is you have to do exactly what you are doing right now, which is to have a resolution that states that this is what you're doing. Okay?
Yep. Thank you.
Yep.
Any other comments or questions? All right, would someone like to move this?
I move it.
No,
Okay,
I'm
that's
not
Joyce.
supposed to talk, but can Teresa talk for a second?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes.
I'm still working full-time from home, so why wouldn't I get my vacation?
If
Or
you need to take
whatever.
it, if you need to
No, I'm
take
just
time
asking.
off now, you're not charged for that.
Well, I'm not, but I'm also working still pretty much 40 hours from home with program plans, watching webinars and everything. So just asking.
That's a good point.
I think we have, Barb's working, I don't know how many days a week. I have seen Teresa there, and I know I've emailed her some things from other libraries, what they're doing. I think we have to be careful having a blanket thing, because if somebody is still working, they should still get their benefits.
That's exactly the thing that Greta Colkin told us to avoid.
Yep.
You cannot do this on the basis of, I think you are working, or you are working harder, or you are not working, because those are the entrees to litigation.
So it's my understanding though that everyone's getting paid, whether they're working or not.
That is correct.
So if someone was getting paid full time and they only chose to work one day, no one's going to know, for better or wiser, what that is. Correct?
But if someone is working full time or even half time, and whether they're working at the library or remotely, and perhaps we have to have them verified. I know when my son worked remotely, and my daughter is now, they're using company computers, and they log on, and that's tracked. But in a sense, those people are working, are being treated the same as those who aren't working. And, again, either way we do it, you can say there's litigation.
So I will go back
Well,
to this. This is the recommendation of the attorney. And just as a personal aside, nobody's been laid off here. And I get it, but I cannot reward those people that I think are working harder or performing more or accomplishing more, because I have no metric for that.
But
Yes, there is an unfairness. I get that, but
if somebody is physically in the building working, that's a pretty easy metric.
Except that's a faulty metric, because if you can accomplish the same thing remotely, then you are punishing the person who is taking the initiative to work at home. And the person who comes here.
We're talking about two different things, though. We're talking about some people who are not working at all. They're just being paid. They're not working, as opposed to those who are working either remotely or at the library. And those are two different classes of people. I mean, that's the reality.
Go ahead.
No, I was saying it was your turn.
They're part of. Are they part of a union?
No
union.
Okay, I don't think that they're being treated. I think if we apply the metric across the board, which is with the advent of COVID, these are the dates, because we cannot make a determination who's working, who's not working, and how long. And for the person that shows up every day, if they're, it's 8 hours a day to make a complete day. And I'm sure people are not staying the full 8 hours a day. They're coming in, they have something to do. They may have something every day. And there are people that are not working. So to me, this is like fair, whether you're present or not present. Everyone is being treated the same. Because once you start trying to determine who's working and who's not working, you might as well just pay everybody.
I'm going to go
something on this.
Oh wait, I'm going to interrupt you. I want to go with what the lawyer advised us.
I agreed.
Is the lawyer aware that there are people who are working from home and working?
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. And so she said, you can't even make the distinction between professional and non-professional, because Barb is working, but some of the other library assistants are not. Well, some of them have serious concerns about whether they can be out in public, let alone in the library, whether they're working alone or not.
I understand that.
Betty Sue?
The other thing that I spoke with Greta about was the concern that for the amount of time that people will have accumulated before we closed, if they had not used any of their accumulated time off, there are people here who get 5 and 6 weeks vacation. So if they have already accumulated, let's say 2 weeks, and then we allow them to accumulate the whole time we're closed, and then it has to be used before the end of the year, Barb's going to have a logistical nightmare trying to staff this building if everybody gets their full vacation. I would recommend that somebody use some vacation now and and say, well, that was a bonus. I don't have to claim it and I'll still have vacation later. I don't know how else to handle that.
And I defer to the attorney. I'm not an attorney, and I am gonna defer to what they say because that's what they said. I don't know. That's my opinion.
I am inclined to think that this is an all or nothing. Either we accept it, we don't try to tweak it, because that may put us in, even if it makes us feel better, would put us in a litigation situation because we got the advice on what we should do, and then we did something else. And if we get into a litigation situation, I'm sure we'll pay Greta to get us out of it, but it doesn't seem as though that's a necessary thing for us to buy into. So far, I don't believe this is on the table yet. Dan, do you have a question?
Yeah, I think we should keep it going the way it is and not punish the employees. And if they want to take their vacation now, then let them. Maybe we can put some stipulations in that. But
Well,
I don't think we should.
From a practical standpoint, where are you going to go? I mean, even if you took leave time, where are you going to go? It's not like, you can go to Disney, or you can go to the mountains, or you can go to the casino, or there's really no place to go.
Now, if they don't use it, is there any way we could pay them out at the end of the year if they're not using it because of the COVID? If they don't use their vacation time, is there any way we could actually pay them out, like give them the check for their vacation time instead of putting it on freeze? If they don't use their vacation time, we could offer them the thing to say, okay, because of COVID this year, if you're not going to use your vacation, we can actually pay you out for it.
I'm inclined to say that the answer to that is yes, but the trustees can do pretty much what they want. We do not have a collective bargaining agreement. We're not saddled with civil service work rules. However, there is something to be said for making ourselves vulnerable by doing kind of arbitrary things. We worked a long time on the paid time off, and one of the reasons we worked on that is that in the old scheme of things, many people banked their sick and vacation time, and it became a giant payout when they finally left library employment. And so we wanted to avoid having people that were making $25,000 or $30,000 a year get a $50,000 retirement check. So we limited the amount that you can bank, and in an effort to be fair to the people who had been here a long time and were earning at a higher rate, more vacation, for example, we allow you to carry some vacation over into the next year. And there are a couple of situations that are discretionary to the director, but that we don't let you bank it forever. That's why we reduce the amount of time that you earn. So all I can tell you is this is the recommendation from the attorney.
Okay.
Can do it or not do it. The reality is we have been doing this. It's a paperwork thing. I don't believe anybody has used any paid leave time since we've been off, but we would have to go back and correct all of that, because that's what Paychex was doing for many of its employees. And so they stopped on the day that we went to the shutdown.
Could we also put policy in saying once we open up, we can only allow so many people to take vacation time? It's like a first come, first served basis. And if you don't get your time in, you're not going to get it, but they can still accumulate it.
I will say again, that's a yes, but that's a real minefield. If we are changing what the past practice has been, and the planning that, some of the folks have already planned on what weeks they're going to take off whenever, because it makes it easier for them to plan. It makes it easier for Barb to plan. This is when somebody's going to be gone. I have to cover this, I have to cover that. The answer is yes, we can do a lot. We can change a lot of things. But I go back to, this is the recommendation from the attorney. And so we either need to take it or not as a block.
I'm
Go
just going to say one last thing. I think we definitely should take it, but I also think looking at it from the angle that everybody wants to do right by their employees, and I think we're doing a great job, but you also have to look at solvency down the road. Like the library is in a great financial position, but it hasn't always been that way, and it may not always be that way. So if we're, we've got to think about those things that if we do this today, is this something that we can do forever, even when times are bad? And it may be that people will lose their jobs in order to continue a practice of paying people the PTO that they're not, they may or may not be earning during a time of crisis. So I would do what the lawyers say because it's fair, and it still gives the employee still has the freedom to use their time during this period as they see fit.
So does that mean that you're moving this resolution?
I will move this resolution.
It's been moved. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Linda has seconded it. Is there any further discussion? Okay, we need 5 positive votes to do this. So let me make sure. Anitris is not here. Dan Conrad, yes or no?
Opposed, no.
No. Debbie DeBacco,
Man. I'll say yes.
Gloria,
I'll say yes.
that's that yes with a hesitation? Yes if?
It is with a hesitation because I understand what Teresa was saying, but yet if this is what the attorney is recommending, and
Okay.
I'm going to just say yes.
All right, Joyce Riley,
Yes.
Linda Weller,
Yes.
Terry Wilbert,
I am hesitant as well, because I don't think it's fair, because we do have people who are working.
Mhm.
And I understand that it's very difficult to prove who's working. I guess one of my questions would be, was the attorney aware that we have people who are working either remotely or in the building?
yes,
And she said to treat them all the same.
yes. So are you a no?
I'm going to say no for now. I'm
Okay.
concerned.
Okay, then I will say yes, which is the 5th vote. My record is Dan and Terry. I'm sorry?
I want to say, I don't think anyone, I'm looking at this as if we're shut down now, we don't know when we're going to open. I don't know when phase 4 is going to be. Say it's in August.
Right.
And say we get another hit in end of September, early September, and now we're shut down again. This is why I want to go with what the attorney said, because as Mrs. Riley said, this could be a never-ending thing. And what if this hits us in September? We're not open till January. We just don't know, which is why I voted to go with what on the attorney's advice, because I'm just not an attorney. And I don't think anyone is like, you don't want to short anyone vacation time. You don't want to short, but there's no even metric. And if the attorney is well aware that some people are coming in and some people aren't, but they're all getting paid irregardless.
Right.
So that's my rationale. It's not a perfect thing, and I think everyone understands that.
And our response to a potential wave 2 or 3 may be different. It may be in another wave that requirement that we pay everybody because we're a pre-funded, tax-funded organization, that may change. So you're right. Every time this comes up, we may be in a different boat. But that's why we're waiving the policy for the dates specified, rather than changing the policy, which then carries into the future.
Mhm. Can I just say, you know, when I took a law class like 40 some odd years ago, the guy told me that I wasn't looking at the law the way a lawyer was. I was looking at what was right and wrong. And so, you know, you sit there and you think, well, how de-incentivizing is it for somebody to work 40 hours while the next person doesn't? But if the lawyer's recommending something as hard as that is to maybe swallow, I think you have to go on their recommendation.
Okay.
So that was my 2 cents.
Any other comments?
Thank you.
Okay. The last one is the director's salary. We've
you
talked
like me to
about,
lead?
talking about, evaluating, talking about. I think the last time we did, I think the last time,
I can tell you what you did. I was hired at $50,000. After,
I was thinking of what we did for the line staff.
okay, you did overall 3%. I had made my recommendations, but the finance committee or personnel or whatever it is decided that it needed to be uniform across the board for 3%. They deferred mine because they felt it needed more discussion. So until then, nothing's been done, and that's okay. But I'm not real comfortable sitting here listening to you all discuss this. So I'm going to walk away.
Okay.
I was going to suggest anyway, Kevin, wouldn't this be something for executive session or no?
It should
If
be.
we were doing evaluative stuff. We're talking the numbers.
How much is she currently making?
$65,000 a year with no health insurance. She has access to the simple IRA. I honestly can't tell you whether or not she participates in that. I'm inclined to think because she's 67, no, but I can't tell you that for sure.
My other question, when was the last time she received an evaluation?
She has not received a formal evaluation since she's been here.
Really?
How long has she been with the library?
5 years.
Why?
Is it my understanding that the 2% was given to all other employees?
Everybody else got 3.
Okay.
How many hours a week?
Well, I guess it's in the category of nominally 40, but she does not clock in and out.
Oh, so she's full-time.
Yes.
May I ask how come it's 2% instead of 3% like everyone else?
Just as a reflection of the conversation that some of us have had, that once you get to the top of the list, you cannot expect what the person who is making $12.50 an hour, you can't expect that percentage when you are making the top end. It was not a successful conversation with the personnel committee, who was comfortable with everybody needs to be the same percentage. It can be any percentage you want.
That was just a question. Thank you.
And Kevin, I believe when we had that meeting with the personnel committee, I forgot who was in that meeting, but we had asked you, I think, if you would check around with the other libraries in the area to see what they were, what their directors was, what they were getting as far as salary. And in the audit, it also suggests that we do that.
So the range, and I included an area which is more than Niagara. So it puts us in the center of the Rochester and the what's the one that's down in Arcade? The Pioneer system and the Niagara system. The range for someone with 5 years experience in the job, not necessarily 5 years experience as a librarian, but 5 years experience in the job, goes from $38,000 to $138,000. It is hard, and Terry ran into this, I think, when he was trying to do comparables on some of the other expenses. It is hard to characterize it because there are librarians who have a service area that's half of ours that are making $100,000 a year because they've been there for 35 years. So we went to new librarians. What are people that are generally our size? And there's nobody who's our exact peer, but people who are generally our size, who are not part of a civil service or school district employment scenario. And the new people are being hired at $65,000, $70,000, $75,000. One of the things that we've talked about in the past is it's fun today, but Betty Sue's not going to be here forever. So at some point, we're going to have to hire a director. And we don't want to go from a librarian that was making $65,000 to somebody who's making $85,000 in 1 year. I put it on the agenda because we haven't done anything with it. We've talked about it. We're going to find different evaluative metrics. I'll tell you, I've looked at 5 or 6 of them, and most of them are horrible. You know, you're scoring 1 of 3 on 12 different items. It's not as bad as the APPR that Terry and Linda and Joyce are familiar with in school evaluations, but so far it's not a good thing. We have the last few years, it's been gut reaction. Are we better than we were a year before? I'm comfortable with that. Have we established, has the hiring reflected wise decision and mentorship? But we haven't formalized that. We do not have to do this tonight. My suggestion at 2% was that we do it right now, that we not try to retroactive to anything, because that just screws the rate up. But since it's been a couple of years, we ought to think about doing something. If we don't do it tonight, we don't do it tonight. But we were doing some other things, and I mean, rather than carry it as an old business forever, we can either act or not act.
I personally feel that we should do an evaluation and then discuss this further. I don't think we should.
Tell me what the evaluation metric is. Do we all write a paragraph?
Well, in the handbook that you gave us, there is a sample of an evaluation in the handbook. I don't have it with me right now. I'm just saying I don't think we should act on it tonight.
Gloria,
That's
actually,
my personal feeling.
the device we're supposed to use, the one in the handbook.
Well, supposed to use, the handbook is generally nothing but recommendations. And unfortunately, a lot of the handbook is recommendations for school district or civil service libraries.
But you know, if I were to listen to that, then that means that we wouldn't do anything, which is not an answer in and of itself. Now, if we're not
certainly
satisfied,
we would do something. We would do whatever the best practice was. I'm just saying that the Green Book is an important thing, but it is not the be-all, end-all of running a library.
No. But I do think that the only job that we have, well, it's not the only job, but one of the jobs that we have as a board is the evaluation of our one employee, which is the director. We're not evaluating the people she employs. That's her job. That she is the only person that we're asked to be accountable for. And based on that accountability, it makes it easier for anyone coming behind us to say, oh, that board, they gave her a raise because, look, they think she's awesome. She's done so many things. Look at how so someone has something they can look at, whether it's a tool that's not a good tool, or it's, let's say you took what was in the book and then every person added any additional notes that they wanted to describe to describe how they would further evaluate her. But I think we're not being fair to Betty Sue not to have in writing how we think she's doing in her job. I know I myself, when I was a manager, I look forward to getting my evaluation, sometimes nervously, because I always want to know where the areas that I can improve and where the areas that I excelled. And then when I got my raise, I can say, oh yeah, they gave me, the 6%, haha.
That's fine. So who is going to take the point on that evaluation?
Kevin, can I just say something? I'm not talking, it's Gloria. I'm not talking about the evaluation in the green book. I'm talking about the evaluation in the Hoag Library trustee book that was given to us to read when we came on the board, and it's attachment 5B. There is a evaluation in our trustee book. And I'm looking at it right now.
Okay.
Mr.
So,
Hardy, when was the last time she got a raise?
2 years ago. 2 years ago at the budget, so that was 2 years and 4 months ago.
When was the last time before this time the employees got a raise?
Almost every year.
So-
Sometimes it's when we do the budget and it starts the first of the year. Sometimes it was like this year that it was put off and it becomes non-retroactive someplace later on in the year.
Just for a little context, the last raise she did receive was $10,000 though. Just, let's make sure we have all the facts on that.
And what is her salary?
65,000.
Okay, so she was making 55, and the library salaries that I see library directors making range from $96,000 to $160,000. So
Actually,
the 10,000 was trying to just get her up even.
I did research on that in the local area, and she's right about average.
I remember that conversation. I remember I pointed out at the time that I did not believe that those were comparable or peer libraries. So we're not going to debate this tonight. We're either going to do it or we're not going to do it. And it sounds like nobody's going to make the motion. So we'll go on. I'm sorry?
I would be comfortable making the motion, but it doesn't sound like anyone else is. I don't think if someone hasn't gotten a raise in 2 years and we just did one for everyone else and she was left off, not to her own,
Terry,
fault.
I think Terry is the only one who is left from long ago when the longtime director was here, and we talked about issues at almost every meeting. This wasn't done, that wasn't done, that wasn't. The library reputation isn't particularly good. We don't have a good rapport with other communities. I mean, and it took us a long time to come to the point where we had to part ways. And what I'm saying is we did all of the processes then, and now, yes, we have not done a formal evaluation in almost 5.5 years. And yet, if I ask you on the side, not in a public meeting and not in a place that's going to be recorded, do you think Betty Sue is doing a good job? I think most people say, oh yeah. And when you hear from the community about the library did this for us and the library did something else for us, and they're always looking to see what they can do to help, whether it's the seniors in the senior parents in being able to distribute their signs because they can't do it at the school, that sort of thing. I get it. I understand that there is a process and we should use the process, but we have not taken a hold of the process.
And I look at it as every time we have a meeting, it's almost like a mini evaluation, because it's like, this is the stuff you have to do. This is the stuff you hadn't done. I mean, I'm good with it only because I think, go ahead, Mrs. Riley. You're muted.
What I would
Okay.
like to suggest is that that Gloria make a copy or send us out that particular evaluation you say that's in the handbook, and that each one of the members complete it. I'll be happy to collate it, bring it to the next meeting. It will be representative of the evaluation, and then we can just formally give her raise and her evaluation, because I do think that there is a lot of good that Betty Sue has done over the years that has not been recognized in print from the board. And we can always point out where people need growth, and ask our kids. They tell us every day that we're always finding stuff wrong, but we also know we're always finding a lot of stuff right. And so we can put this to rest rather than just saying, well, there's no decision on this. Let's make a decision. We have a month between now and our next meeting to complete this, bring it, have it collated, and be able to do this evaluation and give her raise.
Let me
Period.
suggest that if we're going to do this by email, and obviously it's dependent in part on whether Gloria is willing to do that. If we email it out, then there's no reason to wait until the next meeting. So we have a week or 10 days. We complete them, we email them to you so that you can collate them, so it can be an item of conversation at the next board meeting, rather than have the next board meeting be the collection time. And then you
Right.
collate, and then we talk about it at the next one. Does that make sense?
Yeah, Tom, I get it, collate them, and then it's ready, and I can, yeah.
So Gloria, Joyce volunteered you.
Yeah. But that's in everybody has the handbook. Just make a copy and do it.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Okay. All right.
Everybody has the handbook, and it's in the handbook.
Does everyone know where it is in the handbook? And I'm not asking just for me. I'm just asking for those, Dan or.
I can say I don't.
All right, then I will do that. I will find it in the handbook and I will email it to everybody.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
All right,
Thank
and
you.
then when we're done, if I remember, I'll put a note on that says, when you're done with this, email it to Joyce. And Joyce has that funky one. It's the JXM. You can never figure out that it's Joyce Riley because she's a hipster
Right.
or something.
And
Like
that's because I had that when I was Murphy.
So,
I never
so what is,
changed it.
so what is the deadline? So Mr. Doherty, when will you email these out? And
I will
Mrs.
do that
Riley-
this week.
Okay, and Mrs. Riley, what is the deadline that you would like us to have them?
My
back by?
deadline, one minute, if you're gonna mail it out this week, I would like to have it back before the end of next week, so I can get it out to you before the end of the following week.
Okay, can you put a date on that?
I don't have a calendar in front of me. Let me take a look.
Yeah, my watch just died, so I don't have one either.
Yeah, let me take a look.
Okay.
You know-
So you're talking about Saturday the 23rd or thereabouts? So if I get it out,
Well,
that
if-
gives you 1
I'll
week.
say, I should have it done by the 20, I should have it back and sent out to everyone by the 28th.
Okay,
Okay, so Mr. Doherty, when's the date that you will send it to everyone by? The
by
15th?
Friday, by this Friday.
Okay, so Mr. Doherty is going to send us the evaluation thing
So-
by the 15th, and Mrs. Riley would like all of them back by the 28th?
No, I would
No,
like them
I don't-
all back. I would like them back by the 22nd,
Okay,
so that I
Okay.
can be done
by
by
the,
the 28th.
okay.
Okay.
Excuse me, I'm trying to find it's me, Kevin. I'm trying to find in my book. That comes, if director's evaluation comes under a certain committee, under a particular committee, and I don't know if Joyce is on that committee. And I'm trying to find it now, just so we're in order, because it is a committee function.
I'm inclined to think it would be the Personnel Committee, but
Correct, it is.
Okay.
Ooh, I'm not on the Personnel Committee.
well, I can fix that.
We don't have a problem with it if that's what you want to do.
Well,
Well,
I think
I
that-
can
Yes,
collate it
you've done it both
and
ways.
send it to the committee.
In the past, we've
Because
done
all
both
I'm doing
ways.
is collating it and sending it to the committee.
Yeah, in the past, we've done it both ways with the personnel, or I did not participate because it was before my time, but I saw that they did it as a committee and they also did it as a whole board, and then the committee shared it. So they've done it both ways.
So what's your pleasure, folks?
Well, since Mrs. Riley volunteered, I volunteer Mrs. Riley.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Ms. Linda.
Okay. All right.
With Mrs. Riley then forwarding it to the,
I'm gonna forward it out.
committee.
Once I collate everything, I'll forward it out to the entire board.
Okay.
is everyone okay with that?
I am.
Mr.
Okay.
And then when we come to the meeting, you know, everyone, whatever they've sent in will be accounted for. And
Okay.
and then that way we can get down to the business at hand and can put this to rest.
Okay, sounds good. All right, I just a few things for referral, and then we'll talk about the election, if that's okay. Terry has raised 4 policy issues in the last week, absolutely legitimate. Some of them need to be tweaked. Some of them need to have things like dollar amounts changed. However, before we work on them, my suggestion, just a suggestion, is since our policies have been updated and reviewed by Woods Oviatt, my suggestion is I forward those 4, and I don't know, Terry, if everybody got the emails or you just sent them to me. I didn't pay any
I
attention.
sent it to everyone. I would point out that actually the credit card policy was passed in December of 2015. As a matter of fact, Carol Miller made the motion, second by Carrie Deegan, and it was passed. And I believe it was actually written by Woods Oviatt. The whistleblower policy was passed in May of 2015. And I believe that Jan, I don't have who seconded it, but I believe Jan Albanese was the one who made the motion. But that was passed in May of 2015. That's what I could find.
And so are you suggesting that we don't need to have them reviewed?
But for one thing, I think the credit card policy was actually written by Woods Oviatt. And since we've already passed them, the problem is that they were never put into the book.
Okay.
So they should just be put in the book. They're policies of the board. Quite frankly, they're policies of the board, whether we put them in the book or not, because we voted on them.
All right. So that's the credit card and the whistleblower?
Yes.
So are you making a motion to include those previously approved, to have those previously approved policies placed in our policy manuals?
Yes.
I'll second. That was
Linda?
me. Yep,
Linda.
that was me. Sorry.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So ordered, thank you. The other 2, Terry?
Well, I have extra time on my hands, obviously. And a couple of things that came out. One of them was in the latest trustee pamphlet that came out, and they talked about disbursements and things like that. And, you know, many of us have been on nonprofit boards. I've done a lot on nonprofit boards and things like that, and other boards, but I have been on governmental boards. And the difference between a nonprofit, for instance, we just accept the treasurer's report. But when we're dealing with governmental funds, we need to approve each warrant for payment. Many times you can do it in a lump sum. But we have to approve them, and we need to do that now.
I'm sorry.
Problem, and the other one was about conflict of interest. And I actually, the phraseology I took was right out of the blue handbook, the 2018 handbook for library trustees. If we want to have the lawyer take a look at them, that'd be fine. I'd like to have them back, the opinion back from the lawyer for our next meeting, for sure.
All right. All right. I will make that happen. Now, relative to an election, Terry, once again, I don't know if he had a lot of time or he was, really focused. We have missed a couple of opportunities. Yes, we could absolutely have been on the school district ballot, and that would have required some cost sharing. When Mr. Bonnewell contacted me the Thursday before the board meeting, so that would have been last week, to say, what do you want to do? And I said, I want the tax levy resolution on, and we were not prepared to be ready by yesterday morning, to have our elections ready to go with theirs. Next step is we can do an election at any time, but if we do it prior to the end of the month, or actually June 2nd, then we have to be in that absentee ballot
Okay, thank you.
format.
Actually,
The school district is now dreading, which they are stuck with. I don't know that they know how they're going to do it.
They don't.
There are 6,200 and some households in our library service area. Normally in a regular year, we get 110 voters, that sort of stuff, and 18 people at the annual meeting, 9 of whom work for the library or are spouses of trustees, that sort of thing. If we wait until after June 2nd, then assuming that we're into phase 4 of opening and we can at least do delivery out front of books and things and that sort of thing. Once again, the attorney recommendation is we can have the election portion of the annual meeting. Greta is not real comfortable with having an annual meeting on Zoom, except if there were prior resolutions to change association bylaws, or there was something that had to be done to be in compliance with the law. Now, our annual meeting is supposed to be the first Monday in May, but because these are unusual, extraordinary circumstances, we might end up having an annual meeting in August or September. They don't have to be the same. They should be the same if we can do that, but we can have an election separate from the annual meeting. That would require some format. We have not in the past had meetings elections that did not require advanced petitioning. Years ago, once again, I lose track of the years that Terry was on the board because he was the school district representative for a while. We got into a situation at the other building where we had nominations from the floor without any vetting. And we actually elected somebody who lived in Rochester. Not just close to the service area, like I was in Kendall and I didn't realize I was in the wrong spot. It was somebody who was literally out of town. That's why we adopted that protocol that we talk about in March of every year. That's where that came from, was to avoid that. So we can wait and see what the opening schedule is. We can establish an absentee balloting. The current rule, subject to change from executive order, is you stay where you are. We have to have an election before the first week in September. Don't have to have the annual meeting, but we have to have the election. So we do have some wiggle room in the summertime. The downside is that Maurice's position continues to be open, and the officers, like the PTO, they're frozen. They continue on. So, Terry, once again, did a lot of research and sent everybody lots of information. What would you like to do?
Well, let me make one correction. It's not June 2nd, it's July 2nd. The governor's executive order said any election held on or before July 1st had to be an absentee election. So, and talking with Mr. Bonnewell, it's a real show because there's no direction from the governor's office at this point on how they're going to get them. He used our house as an example. He says, I know you have 2 voters, but we don't know that in every household.
Right, and that clearly is one of the issues is I mean, the people that the system generally disenfranchises are the people that are not you and me, older white people that have a husband and wife that have the same name that are recognized as household. And I'm not sure how they work around that. Unfortunately, at this point, it's not our responsibility to do that.
And actually, we can't, if we want to have an absentee thing, which we've never done absentee ballots here, the governor has waived the requirement that you apply for them, as he did away with the requirement that you have to submit petitions, and he did that for everything, for political petitions, school board, everything. So my largest concern is, I mean, we know so little, and I say we, I mean, health professionals know they're learning something every day. And it's kind of interesting. One of the top level virologists just announced that he has it and he's in bed receiving oxygen. And, they're just learning stuff every day. We may well be, this phase 4 may not happen until November for all we know. Paul Pettit indicated that we'll have phase 1 and don't expect, like some of these other states, that after 2 weeks, something else is going to happen. It's going to be like 3 weeks and they're going to check and see if numbers start popping up. If they do, the governor's probably going to shut things down again. So I did look up, the governor did waive the non-for-profit law that you can have a remote or virtual membership meeting, because there are nonprofits that have annual meetings like we do. And he waived all the laws or all the regulations so that you could hold a virtual one. So.
I want to add one thing to what for the school board, when they're doing the ballots, they have to enclose a stamped envelope for return. So in order to reach everyone with this balloting, they're paying postage-wise twice. And when you know that out of 6,000, if you get 500 people to return those ballots, do the math for how much money will be wasted. So
Right.
For us, it is a missed opportunity that we weren't able to combine, because unless we have our regular voting, it's a huge cost if you have to put in a return stamped envelope.
Right. And so initially, you were going to have to request a ballot, and then they were going to send it. And I mean, yes, it just, the only people that were making money were the post office.
Right.
And I'm not sure, I mean, it's not like I have conversations with the people at the school very often. I'm not sure that they have a resolution to that. I mean, obviously they have the email /link to say, please make sure you send me one.
Speaking from, oops, sorry. I was taking a drink. I forgot to turn my video back on. Speaking like Mrs. Riley had just said from the school board thing, we're still waiting for clarification.
Right.
On anything from the state, because, the governor says one thing, NISBA says another. I mean, this is such unprecedented times. Mm-hmm. All across the board that, departments that knew what they were doing are like, I don't know.
Right.
Because,
and unfortunately, this is that time in Albany where, I mean, there are a lot of people that took early retirement when they said, oh, things are, I mean, they said things were getting bad 5 years ago and bailed out. And the state has not, I don't know about the education department specifically, but a lot of the departments with whom I work, they've not backfilled anything. So yeah, we've got 3 people in there and they're doing 8 people, what used to be 8 people's work. And oh, now by the, out of the blue, we're going to add this just monumental amount of even just sending out the information. There just aren't people there to do that.
Right, because they're working from home.
Department got stripped down. Dan has an idea. I know he's talked to me about it.
Yeah, go ahead, Dan.
Yeah, couple of ideas. If we were to mail out the ballots, couldn't they actually return them to the library in the drop slot? Instead of having to pay postage the second time, could they just drop them off in that drop slot? And then also, is there any way we could set up like an electronic voting through the Hoag Library website to where they have to go in, log in, their name, their address, and everything. And then once they vote, they cannot do it again. But if there's another voter in the household, they can vote. So therefore, it's not going to be the same people voting over and over again. It would be you log in your information, your address, whatever information we do, and then once you log in, once you vote, you're out of it. And we set this up for the Albany School District.
So can I comment on those from what I know? If you send it out and you're asking people just to drop it off, then you're creating an additional hardship for those people who don't have the means to possibly get to the library and drop something off. Albion is a very large area, and if you have someone on the outer skirts of our area, you're asking a lot if they don't have that transportation. That's from my understanding, what we've talked about at the school. You can't create an additional hardship. As far as the voting, how would you stop me from registering everybody that I possibly wanted to? Are you going to do it by IP address? Then you're talking about rewriting election laws, kind of.
Linda, could I ask a question? When you said it would create a hardship, how did people vote normally? Like, didn't they come to the library anyways?
Well, yes, but if the state is saying now that they can't come to the library, so some of those people, some of those people are going to be afraid to come to the library. They're not going to, for health reasons, they're not going to want to. But if you're saying you're going to have to come up with a postage yourself, or you're going to have to get a way to get to the library to vote, then you're excluding certain segments of the population.
Yeah, I think part of the problem, and Dan is one of them, are quarantined right now. By the way, hope your mom's doing better. I know he had to leave to talk to his mom, who's in Strong. And the other, I mean, there are people, I mean, I think my wife and I are fanatics. I mean, when we buy our groceries, but God, I know somebody who, they go to the grocery store, come in, throw their clothes in the washer, and take a shower. She told me one day she showered for 4 days. I mean, people are taking this real seriously. And my wife and I mean, we don't go out. I mean, we just had our snow tires changed, and I handed them my keys in a plastic bag. When they were done, I dumped them out. I sanitized my hand. I sanitized the car. This thing's so confusing.
Dan, I mean, the internet idea is a great idea if you can if you can guarantee the security. But unfortunately, in our school district, the number changes. It's somewhere between 28 and 36% of the folks don't have internet access. Now, some of them don't have it for economic reasons, but a lot of them don't have it because you can't get DSL from the phone company except within a radius of the central office, and you can't get Spectrum, Time Warner, if they haven't run the line down your street. And unless they have done the financial calculation that says, yeah, we're going to make money on this, they don't. I mean, that would be a great idea if they could work out some of the details. And I think they're going to have serious trouble with the November election. What if we get another a bounce in September or October? Fortunately, those are not considerations that are germane to us.
So is this a solvable thing for us or no?
Well, we could do an absentee ballot and put forth a good effort to do that. I'm prejudiced because, yeah, I get to stay as the president instead of being dumped out. But that's a lot of money. I mean, even if we're talking $10,000, geez, for the 100 people that we usually get to vote, that's $100 a vote. I mean, that's like Chicago.
Now, is there any way we could set up, people could request an absentee ballot? Where they could actually request it and then we'll mail it out to them? And if they don't request it, they don't get it and they have to request it by a certain date and be back by a certain date? Is that possible?
I honestly don't know. I would have to defer either to the school district people or Terry with his municipal experience.
I know Mrs. Riley can probably, we had just talked about that at the school board meeting about how do you just even trying to mail it out logistically, because we didn't have clear guidance and we were supposed to mail it out. Was it this week, Mrs. Riley? Oh, you're muted.
Exactly. Exactly.
But we didn't have clear guidance of who we're mailing it to, where we're mailing it, but we were supposed to have this postcard. I mean, there's so many logistics, and even, who do you mail it to?
Exactly. Because you can't just mail it to the people that are registered voters. You've got all the unregistered who can vote.
Right. Debbie, I'm sorry. Were you trying to say something, Debbie?
No, I'm just, so what did the school board decide? That are they doing it now, or are they deferring it? Are we deferring it?
The school board can't defer it, correct?
Okay.
No.
We have state mandate that we can't. And the thing is, in a regular election, anybody who wanted to come in and vote could come in and vote. But by doing it by mail, if you don't mail it out to everyone with a return, then you're specifically excluding people.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're doing it, if you try and do something, on the internet, which, it would be very difficult to, try and say, I'm not going to register 20 people in my house. If you do it that way, then you're excluding people who might not have access to internet. I know Mrs. Riley can probably, if I have this right, the school had taken out an advertisement in the Batavia Daily.
Yes. And
to
plus
try and get the word out.
There was the, what was that?
Well, you had to publish the legal notice for your meeting.
Right. They normally have to do 4, and the governor reduced it to 2.
Yeah, I mean, this is...
The first one had to go out yesterday.
Yeah.
So for the library, have we had interest? I mean, do we have candidates to run?
Yes. Yes.
Well,
we had received a one petition from one person already. Dan told me he has all of his signatures and he can't go anywhere, so he can't do anything with it. So we had 2 other people pick up petitions, and that was Joyce and Anitris.
And am I correct in the governor says you can fill out a petition, you can fill out the application, but you don't have to have signatures because you're not supposed to go around and get them.
It is effectively a letter of intent. For the Albion schools, and Joyce will know that, it was the standard form with the spots for the 25 signatures, and all they wanted was you to be voter number 1, so they had the top that had name and address.
Right, and your address. You basically put your name and your address on that form.
Yep.
So we're back to the original conversation. Do we want to ride things out and see how it goes? Do we want to try to break new ground? How bad do you want to get rid of me?
It's going to be a lot of work to try and rewrite an election thing, in my opinion, to make it right, to make it, is there any way, I mean, other libraries have to be in the same situation.
Well, it depends on when their elections are held. If there's, if they're a school district library, like Medina, those all go out with the school district. Other libraries actually have their elections at different times. So, I think
There's no standard, for example, for the time of an annual meeting for a free association library. And many of them do it on the anniversary of when the original organization was. Some of them have moved to do it in December or January so that it's closer to being parallel with your operating year. And then some of them have moved them from January to July and August because they realized nobody came because they went to Florida. That, to get people to come out to a congregate meeting, even when there's no COVID, in January, when many of your interested constituents are older, that just doesn't happen. So yes, it's kind of all over the place. It just happens that this is, had we had an annual meeting in January, it would have been all over.
So what's our action item now? Do we say we're going to ride it out, or do we do something else? Because this has been a long time that we're talking about this.
Right. So I mean, just like the minutes, we're at 25 minutes now. What would you like to do?
Personally, I say we ride it out and hope that this COVID mess clears up where we can do a actual clear, easy, non-costly vote. Hopefully late July.
I think we ought to be looking toward a July date then, which if we made it a Monday which normally would be what we did the vote on, July 6th. If we have some direction from the state, if we have to do something like the town is going to have to do, where we have, spacing and we close down the library except for the voting, that kind of thing, assuming we're even open then. Because the only other way to do it between now and July 2nd is to send out absentee ballots. There's just no choice.
I mean, I recognize that it's self-serving for me to say that, oh, we're not going to replace, or you're not going to hire elect my successor, but it just, there's something about spending any number of thousands of dollars to run an election for which, even if we have double the turnout, so we're going to have 200 people out of the 16,000 people in our service area.
Right.
Now, once again, it's just my personal opinion, but the important part is we have our tax levy resolution on the school district ballot. I mean, that in the scheme of things, people come and go, but you got to have that $700,000. Just as an aside, we have had some conversations, it's not we, I've had some conversations with other free association library presidents, and they are scared to death that if you do the absentee ballot on the school district, that they're going to lose their proposition, because their experience is just like ours. Every year, 200 people vote against the library and 300 people vote against the schools. If the tax rate went away, you would still have 300 people who vote, or some number of people who vote against it, because they said, if you can make it go away, you can send me money back from before. And what's going to happen is, if they pay any attention, they're going to say, oh, I'll get these guys. No. Send it back so it's all on our court, on somebody else's nickel. In our case, it doesn't make any difference. Our resolution for this year is less money than it was for last year. And the rule is, the Section 259 law is, if you lose your election, you go back to the previous one that you won. So it will actually, we'd end up with a little more money. Not a big deal, but it's just, and of course, that will make taxpayers up in arms about how the library got to do that. But between the line of credit and the fact that we're going to get some number of money, we, unlike some folks, don't have to worry about, can we be in business? I mean, we can worry about a lot of things, but we don't have to worry about that. So we have a consensus that we're going to let things go. Debbie, how are you on that?
Oh my God, yes.
Okay, Joyce.
I say let it ride.
Let it ride, because we're going to meet again in a month. We may have more information. Gloria?
Gloria?
Yep.
At this time, I was unmuting. At this time, I guess we'll have to let it ride. Like you said, we're going to meet again in another month and go from there.
Okay. Dan, can you live with that?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So then the next thing is our next meeting. Our next meeting normally, I'm sorry,
Yeah, did you,
Got Terry.
what's that?
you forgot Terry?
Oh, I'm sorry. Terry.
We don't really have a choice. We either do absent
Right. We don't have a choice.
$3,000 minimally, or we write it out.
Okay. So grudgingly, we're going to write it out. All right. So our next meeting then normally would be Wednesday, June 10th. Does that work for everybody?
Yeah.
Okay.
I have to check my very busy schedule.
You're not busy at all. You're doing so much. You sent me more emails in the last 3 days than I've gotten in the previous 3 years.
I've done more. I haven't gone to Tim Hortons in 8 weeks. So I
Actually, I'm checking because I do actually have a vacation scheduled. I'm just waiting for him to cancel it. Yeah,
Oh, I mean,
it's
no,
a Disney, so
Linda,
the
no
chances are
vacation.
slim. Yeah, I should be back on the 7th if I'm able to go. So yeah, I'm good for the 10th.
Disney Shanghai is open.
I know, and it sold out in 15 minutes. Thank you.
Are you flying?
Yeah.
You're nuts.
Yeah.
You're nuts.
Only live once, dude.
There you go.
Okay.
Thank you.
Let me just check with everybody. Is there something, A, that I missed, B, that needs to be on the agenda for next month? Dan?
No, all good.
Okay, Terry?
Good.
You'll send me emails, I know that. I mean, are there conversation bits that we need to talk about tonight, considering that it's 9:50?
Yeah, I've been working 15-hour days for almost a week and a half now. So I'm like really at the end of my ability to concentrate here.
So you don't have anything that we want to talk about some more?
Anything, no.
Okay, Linda?
I'm good.
Joyce?
I'm good.
Gloria?
Well,
Oh, Gloria.
I'm good. I'm good. I'm good.
Okay, all right. If there's nothing else for the good of the order, whose turn is it to move that we adjourn?
Me.
It's Debbie. It
I'll
was
second.
moved by Debbie and unanimously seconded that we adjourn our meeting at 9:52. For those of you who joined us on Zoom, thank you very much. I hope it was entertaining for you. We'll try to work some of the glitches out and get started on time next time around. Thank you.
Thank
Yep.
you, everyone.
Thank you. Good night.
Good luck with your mom, Dan.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Thank you.
Yeah.